Too much water and not enough telephones. That's the topic today. It's business continuation, broadcast business continuation after a disaster. That's coming up on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support online at bgs.cc. By the Ruby Console from Lavo. See Lavo in your future at lavo.com/TWiRT. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by the CalRec Type R console system. Type R is a brand new, modular, expandable IP-based radio system from CalRec Audio. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. It's a show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. And today, we're talking about things that are generally outside the broadcast center, outside the radio station, the TV station, the broadcast facility, that impinge upon it and take it off the air. And how are you going to plan to get around that? We're talking about broadcast business continuity. I guess maybe that's a term. Maybe I made part of that up. But the continuation of doing business. And it applies whether you're a public broadcaster or a commercial broadcaster, because you need to have a way to get back on the air when bad things happen. And that's what we're talking about today. And we have a couple of real life stories about that. And I'm sure, broadcast engineers, a lot of us have stories about, oh yeah, our tower fell down for our AM station. We ran a long wire and tuned it up into that. And after we bought our new solid state transmitter, tuning it up was a lot more difficult, right? So back in the old days of tube transmitters, that was easier. And that used to be one of the more common broadcast business continuity things you did was you'd run a long wire from the transmitter building out to a tree somewhere or to a telephone pole and get back on the air that way. But that's not the only thing that can take us off the air. And so we're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes as our show moves along. I'm Kirk Harnack. I work for the folks at the Telos Alliance. This is the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's where I do the show from. We're going to head out over to the East Coast, where I think they've been getting some nasty weather today. I was watching it on the radar. Chris Tobin is with us. Chris, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech.
Why, thank you, Kirk. Yes, it's been raining all day, and it apparently will continue to rain throughout the evening, so it's going to be a wet one, but so be it. It's Mother Nature. You can't do much about it.
I know. Gosh, we got so much rain here in Tennessee. We were like double the amount of rain for this point in the year. Like we had about almost 12 inches of rain here in Nashville as of about a week ago. Just a lot.
I think we're at our limits, or maybe we've surpassed some of them. I don't think we've set any records, but it's definitely been a lot of wet season. But it's good. It's good.
Coming up in a few minutes after we introduce our guest, or maybe later on in the show. But Chris, you've got a story that really does involve water, don't you?
Yes, I will discuss something that was interesting beyond our control, but we managed to wade through it.
Yeah, you sure did. It's a good story, and it's really kind of amazing how it happened. And yes, I'm wetting the whistles and teasing people to stay tuned, because I was amazed at how water made its way into your building. So that's pretty interesting. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Let's see. Joe Talbot is with us as well. Joe, you haven't been on here in a while. Welcome back. How are you?
Hi. Great. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm at a transmitter site. I'm in Palm Springs, California today, where the wind has come up and it's, cows are blowing by and stuff like that. So anyway, it gets pretty interesting here. I'm working at an AM site today.
I don't know much about Palm Springs other than, I hear that some famous actors live there and there's golf courses. So is the AM transmitter site like at a golf course?
No, it's out in the middle. We're north of the airport a little bit, near the freeway, on a big empty piece of property. So it's basically sand dunes and coyotes, and it's the Wild West out here. So
you're a Navy guy, so that means you're not really a golfer, right?
No, not. I'm wearing them on this today because it's dirty here, and I'm going to get dirty today. So Anyway, I got all this free clothing,
I always think of our military guys. If they're golfers, they're probably in the Air Force. That may be
typically that's the case. Yes. Yeah. No, it's pretty much right on.
You guys ever hit golf balls off the deck of a carrier? You ever do that?
I didn't do a lot of shipboard time. I was usually cargo, so I didn't do much of that. But I think they probably do that. That sounds about right.
least from the top of the bridge, you know. All right, Joe, we brought you in, and thank you for graciously offering to be here.
Happy to be here.
In fact, since, Joe, what's your time schedule like? Do you need to go in half an hour? Can you stay with us for an hour? What's up? What's
stay
your
as long as you want. I'll just have to work a little later tonight. Not a big deal. So
okay, well, tell you what. Why don't we chat with you a bit first when we come back from our break? And I want to when Chris and I were talking about this near disaster that happened over at a radio station that Chris works with, and I thought, we ought to do a show about business continuity, how to stay in business, what to do beforehand to prepare for these things. And now Chris really has studied this kind of thing and implemented a lot of these ideas for years and years and years. And Joe has too, but I always think of Joe as doing that on the telephony side, because when Joe, when you specify, like for big companies, big broadcasters, networks, when you specify a telephony system for them, you always include backup, so they can stay on the air. So that's what we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store. This week, telling you about the folks from Innovonics and their new Aaron 655. Take it away.
The Aaron 655 is the latest addition to the Innovonics family of rebroadcast receivers, designed specifically for FM broadcast translators, also referred to as relay transmitters. The Aaron 655 is unique as an uncompromising DSP-based HD radio and FM receiver combined with a powerful 3-band audio processor and dynamic RDS encoder. IP connectivity adds streaming capabilities, and a web browser interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. The Aaron 655 gives you maximum flexibility for program sources. Select program audio from analog FM, digital channels HD1 through 8, streaming sources, and analog or AES digital line inputs, all with assignable failover audio backup. The internal RDS encoder allows you to customize your RDS messaging. You can use incoming off-air RDS data, convert HD radio pad data to RDS, convert streamed metadata to RDS, or receive IP telnet data. Comprehensive audio processing includes gated and windowed AGC, a unique syllabic leveler, 3 bands of compression, and both wideband and independent HF limiting. Easy setup is achieved by using 10 factory presets and 10 customizable presets. The processor also supports day parting, allowing automatic preset changes to follow different programming formats throughout your broadcast day. The front panel has an OLED display and jog wheel with intuitive menus for easy setup, advanced control, and editing for all operating parameters. The Aaron 655 dynamic web interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. A comprehensive set of menus includes a quick overview of now playing info, input-output control, processor options, RDS encoder, alarms and notifications, SNMP settings, and much more. You can also listen to the live audio broadcast streamed through the web interface.
What an awesome device. And so many radio stations these days are operating translators and feeding them with their HD2 signal. I know we're doing that. A number of people are doing that here in Nashville, in markets all across the U.S. And maybe the original plan to feed your translator isn't working out as well as you thought it might. Check out the Aaron 655. It'll keep you legal and get all that RDS data on the air and do some processing that's appropriate for your FM translator after receiving the HD2 signal off the air from your main station. So just a really cool device. And you can get it, of course, at Broadcasters General Store. You can call them at 352-622-7700 or visit them on the web at bgs.cc. And by the way, if you deal with BGS, you probably have talked at some point with Jessica Shute. Congratulations, Jessica. She's a married woman now. So congrats, Jess. All right. This week in Radio Tech, Kirk Harnack, Chris Tobin, and Joe Talbot are all along here. And I want to talk to Joe and Chris. You pipe up too, because Chris, I'm sure you've done some backup telephony as well. You know, for a broadcaster, telephones are important, especially if you've got to get some news out, if you got to talk to newsmakers, if you got to talk to police, fire, emergency crews to get official information out. If there's a disaster going on, like Sandy Sandy, like Chris went through, Hurricane Sandy up in the Northeast, or the Hurricane Michael that our friend Charlie Wooten went through, and we had him on the show a few months ago. When there's a disaster, localized or widespread, broadcasters need their telephones to work. And Joe Talbot, you've been doing phones since what? Not long after Mr. Bell. So I'm sure you've had time to work out a lot of backup plans.
1977 or so, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, I most recently worked for KGO up in San Francisco, and news talk station, and didn't have any earthquakes or anything really horrible happen. But San Francisco is an old town, and San Francisco has crazy things that happen. Sinkholes open up, and vaults full of wire burn up and blow up and fill with, you name it. So one night I'm at work, it's about 7 p.m. and they call me and say, the phones have gone dead. And I start looking at things, and there's red lights on everything. Everything's gone into alarm. Everything coming from telco is down. And I came to find out later that a power vault had blown up and taken the phone wires with it. So we had to switch over to some kind of a backup, and I had put in a bunch of SIP stuff because that was experimental back then, and we had SIP trunks from our wireless provider because I wanted another route into the station that didn't require the phone company, or I didn't really have any other choices at the time. We were trying to get some fiber in there, but it was $50,000 to bring it in for construction charges, But so anyway, I just changed it over to the other phone lines on the over the wireless microwave, the microwave, and they were getting phone calls immediately, and nobody cared about it, and that was done. So there's nothing taking us off the air. It was really nice. Because a talk station with no phone lines is, I like to say this, less stimulating talk radio. But yeah, but that really helped us out. And I recommend getting whatever you can into the place. Every situation is different. Some places you've got fiber or even multiple fibers available. I've got some friends down at Cox in Tampa that they have a little bit of everything. They have like 6 different routes into the station. So nothing's going to take them off. And come hurricane season, that's really important. Yeah.
So what I hear you saying, and Chris, maybe you could chime in too. I'm sure you'd agree that for disaster, for dealing with a disaster, dealing with a service being down, it used to be for decades that it was Ma Bell. That was it. Whatever your provider was, Southwestern Bell, Northeastern Bell, New York Bell, AT&T, whatever it was, General Telephone, GTE, you had a provider, and whatever they did for you is what you had. You didn't have these alternatives. And so I think sometimes our mindset may still be that way, that there's one choice. But Joe, maybe you could address that, and then address the fact that so many businesses, including broadcasters, have been or are moving to SIP service. And with SIP, it doesn't really matter who carries the last mile into your building. So talk to us about that a bit. That mindset.
Sure. Well, just the building I'm in right now even is, there's a Frontier circuit. There's a 50-pair cable that goes down the street. And at the pole, it's spread out over the ground, and it's all corroded and blue. And none of the circuits in this thing work. Well, we don't use it. We can't use it. We probably will never use it again. There's a dish on the building that points to the local mountain, and that's got the circuit that we're talking over right now. It's got, telephones, cameras, audio program, remote control. It's got all that stuff on it. And it's, it's an $89 radio. It's a ubiquity radio. That's within the reach of everybody these days. So, even if you got to do it, do it yourself, take on that responsibility, do it yourself. You'll be glad you did. But it depends where you are. The Palm Springs here is pretty good. There's a lot of fiber available. Frontier offers fiber. There's different. The cable company offers fiber. It's not too bad. There's more options. Where I live up in Pahrump, Nevada, it's a lot lighter. I've got one provider, and DSL, and the DSL is kind of flaky these days. So, yeah, maybe Chris, if you could chime in some of the situations that you have taken care of in the New York City area.
What do you do for redundancy in telephony, or can you use a different circuit for, SIP registrations, for example?
Well, the folks I've worked with on a couple of occasions, a lot of folks lately, and I'm working with a TV network, a TV station, part of a network, and they're actually in the process of putting together two different circuits from two different carriers to provide them IP in and out of their premises so that you can have some redundancy. And with SIP, as Joe knows, you could program shift it, you can move it to other places and do things. But if you're not in that situation, maybe you're in a different arrangement. As Joe pointed out, you have an STL link that's a wireless link. If you've made that robust at the studio side, and the transmitter will assume is robust because your transmitter side, put payload over there, put traffic on that you can use, so that you do lose the traditional method of communications at your studio. You still have something, have 2 or 3 lines from the transmitter site that are used for making calls out in case of a problem, or at least keep some kind of continuity with the outside world. And also backhaul your internet from there. So let's say, use an example. You're at a studio, you have your fiber optic cable coming into the building, you're happy, everybody's doing their thing, and TLC is humming along, things are great, and all of a sudden the company's out there replacing water mains and decides, we got to cut this pipe that we think is a water pipe. Turns out to be a telecom pipe, and that means you're going to lose everything. And all of a sudden you notice your internet is gone. Then you notice your phones are dead, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And you're now pretty much deaf and almost blind because your cameras are off as well. So what do you do? Well, if you had a wireless STL link, which many of us probably can do these days, as Joe pointed out with Ubiquity products, or I should say the non-licensed 5.8 products, Ubiquity and the others that are out there. And you'd still have connectivity. You'd still be able to call that carrier and say, look, there's been a problem. We don't know what's going on. Can you talk to us? And if you don't, you're literally on your cell phone. But wait a minute, what if the cell site is served by that same fiber cut that you just found out happened? Oh, yeah, I worked at a place over the summer, last summer, where believe it or not, the facility I was doing some work at lost their communications, and it turns out that it was also the same fiber trunk that fed the one cell site that happened to serve that particular part of the region I was in, the county. So even though I had a cell phone, I had 4 bars, so 5 bars. It was great. I had no downtime. There was nothing. And it was funny because we drove the road and we followed the fiber from their facility. It was it's out in the woods pretty much down the road, and there was a truck, a fiber truck with the local carrier. And we're like, oh. So I said to the guy, so I noticed my cell is out. He goes, yeah, you see that road down that way? That's the cell site that serves this area, and that's the fiber that's out as well. So you have no downtime. I was like, wow.
So as far as we're talking about
two-way radios from the amateur we set up, so I was able to communicate with the guy at the job site and say, okay, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do. So these are things you have to think about and consider and say, wow, what if? Because here even here in New York City, everybody relies on their cell phones. I actually have maintained, believe it or not, this is a 2-way radio. You see that? Look at that. That's an old-fashioned thing there for many of the audience. Wow, what does that do? And there we go. Oh, there's a sound we never heard before. Believe it or not, I have access to 3 different repeaters that I can go to. Oh, there's one right now. But I can communicate and give a call to somebody in the city or back at the studios and say, grab the radio, let's get talking. Because why? Some locations you're at, when things go haywire, if you will, cell service gets what? Oh, that's right. It gets overloaded. Then you no longer can. I can't get the studio. I don't know what's going on. The studio's not picking up. What's going on? Who's at this? But if you're controlling this little guy and you have access to the proper setup, you're up and talking. So that's the trick. Think it through. I'm just saying, I'm not saying use these particular devices. There's other ways of doing these things. And there's also, let's see, I got it here. Oh, you know what you could do with the microphone bags after you plug the microphone into the mic boom and use it in the studio? These bags are handy for all kinds of stuff. One, I use it for my LED lights for the camera. But this one happens to have my little emergency communications kit. And then, by the way, the plastic bag is so that in case this gets wet outside, because it happens to be raining when all hell breaks loose, because it's always a rainy day. It's like in the movies. Nothing good happens on a sunny day. It's always nothing that you want. It's always a rain happening, Our hero's got to run out and save somebody. It's pouring rain. What happened? So here we go. We have our traditional MiFi puck. This is a Verizon one, LTE 4G.
Oh, yeah.
Along with the power adapter. Now, this is very important. You notice there's a little scribble writing on it. It's wearing off, but it says MiFi, so you know. Make sure when you get these little adapters for your micro USB cable, check the current. Yes, I can charge this with almost any of these little cubes you can get for charging a USB cable. but
Yeah.
it will not function. It will not turn on, stay on, and actually make connections for you unless it draws enough current. This is a 2.2 amp adapter. Most of the ones
That
you
little
get
thing is?
are
Wow.
not.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's a switching supply. It's probably the noisiest thing RF-wise, but it's
Yeah.
this and this and this cable is a kit. I can actually turn on my little Novatel MiFi and actually set up a hotspot, connect to the LTE network, and begin operating. So I've tested this. I've tried it with other adapters. I don't have one around. And sure enough, it turns off. It will not stay on. If you unplug it, it goes to battery, but battery's not going to last very long. And then in the kit is also, this is a robotics group, First Mid-Atlantic, little battery, USB battery.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is handy because, believe it or not, this can power this in the event the internal battery goes out. So you still have capabilities. Just pointing out, these are things to think about. And, keep them at the office, keep them at the studio, keep one at the transmitter site. Check on it periodically. It doesn't have to be turned on. Just make sure that the power source that you go with is available to work. And that's a handy way to do things. I have some other stuff we'll talk about later in the show, but just to get your thoughts going and juices moving. You have to think through the scenario. You have to do the what if. What, as a friend of mine, Andrew knows, Andrew Azarian from the network, we've talked about this a couple of times. I always say, what if this? And it's like, that'll never happen. Never say never, because lately, the last 10 years, we've had a lot of crazy weather conditions occur and things we're like, oh, we weren't expecting that. And I can tell you something that happened to me 2 weeks ago at this facility that we didn't expect to happen either. But we've fared very well. So those are things to think about. So the question I have for Joe, now that I thought as we're talking, if I'm a radio station or a TV facility or an internet radio station, and I have a SIP trunk coming into my plant, and I'm using it for whatever, talk shows and regular business office travel, how difficult is it to have the ability to have that trunk, I'll just use the phrase, swing to another location or access it offsite in the event of a continuity failure?
The simplest situation is if the provider is somebody that's over the internet. Now, for big market stuff, I historically haven't really recommended that, but I use it. I do have it available for a backup because it's so inexpensive and so easy to do. If it's an internet provider, pardon me, if it's a SIP provider where you register to them over the internet, it's very easy to do that. I mean, you just basically change over to your other provider and just re-register. And when you register, that's basically SIP's way of saying, hey, I'm out here. This is the IP address to direct traffic to, and so forth. So, that's quite easy. If the provider has their own physical circuits, it becomes a little more difficult, and you have to plan in advance. A lot of times, you could, with that provider, also work out an arrangement where they offered an internet backup situation where if you did register across the internet, that it would direct the traffic that way as well. There's a lot of different ways. Now, if you control your network, you're in a really good situation, really powerful situation.
Yeah. Hey, I want to jump in and just kind of set that stage because there's some people that may not have been able to follow along with SIP service. And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. There's a couple real basic ways. If you have a hosted PBX provider in the cloud, like my radio stations do, we could access from anywhere. We could plug in a pre-configured SIP telephone or a SIP phone system at our radio station from anywhere on the planet, basically, and get back to the hosted PBX. And so I get that. I think a lot of people get that, right? So you may normally at your broadcast facility use your main internet provider, but if that one dies, you could get backup provider from a wireless ISP. You could even do a satellite ISP if you're real careful with your bandwidth. There's alternatives. But this thing, and you answered it, and that is the trunking. So let's say I've got my own SIP PBX at my broadcast center, and that would not be hosted somewhere else. In other words, I've got it on site, and so I'm subscribing to SIP trunks from some provider, right?
The registration process really isn't very different. And it's not really different at all. Yeah, I mean the difference is you've got endpoints. Endpoints are phones. SIP trunks are basically PBXs. So the PBX would register, and all the traffic that would ordinarily be sent to that PBX in the way that it's sent to that PBX, how many digits you're getting and we're sending or whatever, that would all transfer over as well. So, it's very straightforward.
So you mentioned though, and I did a video about this for my employer, Telos, about 2-3 years ago, that there's a couple different ways to get SIP trunks into a facility. You can get them over the public internet, or you can get a managed service where, let's say you get it from, Joe's telephone company, but Joe doesn't have his own fiber. So Joe rents fiber from AT&T or Verizon or some other provider. And now Joe's kind of the middle guy. And I said, Joe, I didn't really mean to point at you, but anyway, but you manage that fiber for me. So if I have a problem, I call you. If it's an actual problem with the physical plant, with the fiber itself, you'll probably have a special number to call AT&T, Verizon, whoever's physical stuff it is. But then there are other providers like XO Communications, and I'm sure, Joe, you can tell us about others, that also own their own physical plant. Right? It's their fiber that they bring into your building. And so what my question was, and you answered it, I think, and that is that if my fiber normally comes in, or if my SIP trunks normally come in over somebody else's physical property, and that property gets cut, severed, goes away, damaged in some way, can I get my SIP trunks via some other connection method that still works? And you said, yeah, if you arrange that in advance with your SIP trunk provider.
That's kind of the key. At least think about it. I mean, a lot of times if you call these guys and you're in trouble, I mean, you're off and you haven't thought about it and you're just screwed. Okay, let's be honest. You're just kind of help me. Sometimes they can, because they control the numbers and they control the access arrangements. So they might be able to move those numbers over to a hosted platform for, over the internet for a period of time to get you by. A lot of those guys are really flexible and really creative. The smaller they are, typically, the better they are in that respect. Although the larger guys have access to more networks, they have access to, more fiber, more physical facilities. So that's kind of the trade-off. Wherever possible, deal with a mix of providers. I like little guys because they're creative and they're flexible and they're often cheap, and big guys because they've got the power of big networks behind them. So if that helps.
Okay. Well, and I keep contrasting this in my head because, for decades as broadcasters, we dealt with the telco. And if there was a problem, you couldn't, use competitive telco B to access your lines from competitive telco A, right? First of all, there probably wasn't a competitive telco for decades. So you were just out of luck. But with today, since we can... Have you ever been in what they call a meet me room? Ever been in a co-location facility? No.
You will go to New York, or actually go to any big city in the country and see if you can get into the meet me room. I mean, it's a high security place, but it's where everybody's fibers come together in one place, and you've never seen anything like it. It's like a telephone central office cable vault on steroids. It's everybody coming together, and there's places where they can all interconnect. So there's a lot of flexibility in these today. So these co-location facilities are crazy. Anyway, I really recommend, if you get a chance, please go see one.
I will look that up. I don't think there's one in Nashville, but I'll look that up. I do travel some. So.
Oh, there should be. So? They just keep it under wraps, but I'm sure there is. Gotcha.
All right. I will.
It'll make you see things differently.
It's also called. Is it also called a co-location data center? Is that a newer phrase for it, or is it still called a meet me room?
Where the cables come together, I've always heard called a meet me room, because it's where the carriers meet each other.
Yeah. Interesting. So a little advanced planning, and I know Chris, Tobin, and we've been promoting that SIP is such a great idea, and one of the reasons is because you can have numerous ways to access the services that you want on a moment's notice. So, I mean, I got a SIP phone right here next to me. It gives me an extension from my radio stations in Mississippi, and also another extension from my radio stations in Hawaii. And I would have a third one for my stations in American Samoa, but the internet there sucks so bad. There you go. So you can plug that in anywhere, right?
I've got an account from my home PBX. I've got an account from radio station PBX, and I've got a direct one from a provider. So yeah, good to go.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I've been chatting with a contract engineer, a guy who's been on this show before. We'll probably have him on again, and I don't know if you want me to say his name, but he's been having a little bit of difficulty in configuring some SIP provisioning in his telephone, and we were talking about it, and I said, hey, why don't you just grab a generic SIP phone and get that to work with the service that you're trying to connect to? And he said, well, I don't have one. I said, oh man, dude, I mean, literally on sale, $26 from Amazon, and you can get one with a display and everything, and you just use a laptop to go configure it, and bam, you can test all kinds of things. So, Joe, I'm guessing you would highly recommend that today's engineer carry a basic SIP phone.
Oh, it's a great tool. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, you buy the cheapest low-end Grandstream, for 28 or $50 or, in that neighborhood. It's got G722. I mean, it's got, it's got all kinds of things. So even the cheapest ones do. So, it's a very useful tool. Plus, it's sort of, I mean, all the options are there on those phones. I mean, you can, even if some of the, it's nice to be able to deal with the SIP network without the vagaries of the operating system in the way. I mean, the Windows firewall, all that kind of stuff to get in your way and screw you up. These phones don't have that, so it's kind of nice. Yeah, I get one. I carry one. That's a good idea.
Chris, we're going to add that to our list of things the modern broadcast engineer ought to have. Don't you think?
Absolutely. You could also get the ones for your phone too.
That's true.
You still need a butt
there's
set.
one more. Well, yeah, there's one more. As I mentioned that, Chris, earlier, I was thinking, well, you can get there's free or $5 and $8 apps for your phone that are SIP phones, but you also have the extra layer of ambiguity, and that is the Wi-Fi or whatever or carrier, whatever you're on to connect your phone to the internet. It's just one more little layer of ambiguity. I'd love something I can plug into a known network. If my laptop hits the internet, probably this phone will hit the internet too. And so that's why I like to carry one with me. So, hey, we're talking about how to stay in business after a disaster hits at your broadcast center. We've been talking with Joe Talbot about SIP technology and keeping the phones alive or getting them to come back to life when your main service is cut, and SIP telephony can help you do that. Hey, if you can, if you can arrange to have internet access at your broadcast center, even if it's not your main one, if you can have a MiFi like Chris was pointing out, or an alternative service, or we mentioned the a 5.8 gigahertz link. We mentioned Ubiquiti, since that's the ubiquitous brand that's out there. But I've got a transmitter site where that's my internet. It goes over a Ubiquiti backhaul, and they can be pretty cheap, and they work well, as Chris Tobin has pointed out. So you can get these hooked up. I've got an STL at one of my radio stations that carries 2 radio stations, audio, high quality live wire, and it's got room to carry. I don't have a SIP phone out there now, but it sure has room for it. And each radio was $79. Now, in fact, installing them cost a lot more with the shielded cable and the grounding and the surge protectors and all that. So altogether, it was probably about $500 or $600. But for a minimal cost, you can shoot internet several miles and have it available. Hey, we're doing This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about all things from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. We'll continue here with Joe Talbot and Chris Tobin in just a minute. Hang on.
CalRec's Type R is a modular, expandable IP-based radio system featuring 3 slimline panels, a fader panel, a large soft panel, and a small soft panel, easily configured to give the operator full control. Layouts are saved and recalled quickly between shows. A single 2RU core with integrated I/O gets customers up and running fast, and that single core can power up to 3 independent mixing environments with no sharing of DSP resources. Available in 4 DSP packs, and as your station grows, larger packs can be added, enabling it to grow with you. Power to the surface is supplied via standard PoE switches, keeping cabling to a minimum. Type R is fully AES67 compatible, as defined by SMPTE 2110, which means that it is also compliant with NMOS discovery and connection management specs. All these features combined make Type R the most flexible radio console you can buy. Find out more at calrec.com/TWiRT.
CalRec, known around the world for audio consoles, and now in the U.S. With their Type R. calrec.com/TWiRT. Hey, studio guests are only human, and humans cough and they sniff and they clear their throats, even on the air. You can cure this with the Angry Audio Guest Gizmo. Press the cough button, mute the mic. Every guest needs one. You know what else guests need? Well, they need headphones, which is why each Guest Gizmo also has a studio-quality headphone amp with individual volume control. Anything else? Well, you've seen those mic arms with the built-in LED tallies. They're gorgeous. But how do you light them up? Well, the Guest Gizmo does that too, illuminating the red light whenever the mic is hot. Installing the Guest Gizmo in your studio furniture could not be easier. You just need one of those, a 2 3/4-inch hole saw and a steady hand. You don't need a router. Your studio gets a clean, custom appearance, and you get all the credit. Check out the Guest Gizmo and all the other cool gadgets at angryaudio.com. Angryaudio.com. A lot of fun stuff you'll find for making your studio builds a lot easier. Thanks a lot to CalRec and to Angry Audio for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack here in Nashville at the TELUS Alliance studio, and I'm joined by Chris Tobin, who is at one of his mystery studios. I don't know, Chris, how do you choose a studio from which to do the show? Do you like have a little wheel you spin, like Pat Sajak, or what do you do?
It's a dart on the wall. It all depends. I mean, I was planning on trying to do it from the performance studio today, but because we ran late, I couldn't do it. So I popped into a voice booth, and here I am.
Gotcha. Hey, tell you what, Chris, we're going to go to you, but we're going to hear a few last words from Joe. Not those kind of last words, just some last words of advice before he has to go. Joe, so I know you've done a lot of other, planning for business continuation, disaster recovery. What other advice might you have that might either be with the telephony area or outside of that?
Well, I mean, it's hard to anticipate what happens, but I mean, over a period of time, you learn the history of a facility in the area and the technology. So, have stuff around, be ready. I mean, this particular place where I'm at right now has a lot of old stuff that probably shouldn't be around anymore. But I mean, it's helpful to have some basic tools that you can use to get yourself out of a pinch. So, obviously, more providers is better, and more. Any of the things you need to connect those things together is helpful. So,
it used to be, Joe, that, I say it's always been a mix, right? So a lot of the small stations I worked for, we had a 950 megahertz STL, and that's pretty self-contained. You're not depending typically on anybody else to get your signal from the studio to the transmitter. But there are plenty of stations that have always depended on T1 circuits. I mean, if the studio is in a downtown, canyon environment, and you don't have easy access to a rooftop that can see your transmitter site or all your transmitter sites, you've got to use telco circuits. And then we moved into the world of IP, where we have, if you got line of sight, you got, an IP radio. That's possible, licensed or unlicensed, or you're using services provided by some ISP, and you have a choice there. So I guess as time goes on, I feel like we have more choices now than ever before. But if you can keep it where you're doing it yourself and you have control over it, that's always a good number one option. Yeah.
I think so. Another thing, I mean, for example, here we've got a 950 STL. The 950 STL is kind of flaky. And so we're using, actually, we have a number of these Innovonics boxes that are really, you're talking about the beginning of the show, that are really terrific for keeping streams on the air, and they sound wonderful. But anyway, we use that over IP radios. But let's say we lose an IP radio or we lose a provider. Well, I was thinking about, for example, putting, you can buy the Ubiquity radios in 900 megahertz. So I was thinking about buying a pair of those things, because I can plug those right into my existing STL path, and I'm going to have, at least, 50 megas out here at that point. So another reliable path that's point to point, and it's a little more robust than the 5.8 stuff. And there's ways to deal with it too. I mean, there's certainly other stuff on those bands, but you put attenuators on things, and there's all kinds of trickery you can do. But that's another option. I think most people don't even realize those radios are available in 902 to 928, and they are.
You're right. And so for some years, the people at Mosley have offered the LAN link, which was kind of an earlier version of that kind of radio. And then they offered a combiner to combine, the LAN link into your existing STL coax and antenna for 950, because the 950 antenna is good enough to do the 900
sure
frequency stuff, but the combiners are really expensive. And you just said something, Joe, that I hadn't really thought of. So let's say that you've got a 950 link, so you got a 950 transmitter and a 950 receiver. Of course, it's one way. It's probably audio only. I guess you could have a Starlink type of system to do some extra data, but you've got the system in place. But let's say it's getting long in the tooth. Well, you could go get one of these Ubiquiti, or you could get a LAN link from Mosley, but you get a Ubiquiti radio at that frequency. I think the Ubiquitis are spec'd at a higher data rate for the bandwidth used. And anyway, you could quit using your 950 gear, your 950 radios, and still use the 950 antennas. That's where your investment really is, right?
Exactly. Although I got to say, don't let that go. Don't let that analog channel go. Keep it in use, and the combiners, you can buy those from guys like Tally, tuned up on your frequencies. I mean, it's not that crazy. So there's ways to, the RF guys are pretty good about that these days.
Let's turn to Chris Tobin and hear his story. Joe, if you can stay with us, please do. I think you're going to find the story fascinating. If you need to go.
Okay.
Chris, you had this great disaster. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at it, but the description of how it happened was just I wouldn't have thought about this, and yet, bam, there it happened. Why don't you take us through what happened there?
Sure, no problem. Sure. I'm sorry, it's my broadcast continuity router. I gotta take good care of it. Okay. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, so about a couple of weeks ago, there's a project going on here in the city, and they're replacing water pipes, standard stuff. You see that around the country. It's nothing uncommon. And literally in the evening of one day during the week, as I'm on my way out the door, suddenly there's a report of water in the basement. I'm like, oh, great. We have bathrooms in the basement, so something may have backed up. That's not uncommon. Go down, and there's like water coming through this metal box on the wall. I'm like, that's the electrical service coming into the building. That's not a good sign. So we pop the cover gets popped off, and sure enough, there are 3 conduits, and picture 3-inch conduits with very large service. Okay, we got about 800 amps downstairs. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's coming through, and the water is coming right along with it. Thankfully, when they did the installation for the service, they bundle the butt splice. The wires get butt spliced together, and if you can picture the shape of a paper clip, a U, the butt splice part of the U is at the very top. So it's literally 12, 13, or maybe 14 inches above where the water was coming in. The water is hitting the bottom of the box and running out.
A lot of times we think about a drip loop. This was an anti-drip loop.
This was an anti-drip loop, but the water came through, and because those butt splices were up above where the water was gathering and running off out of the box, there was no danger, so to speak. Well, thankfully, we caught it in time, because with the cover on the box, I'm sure it would have found its way to creating trouble. So and then we went outside and talked to the folks who were doing some work on the street, and we said, hey guys, and we looked down, and the trench is full of water. We're like, I think that water is backing up into one of the conduits that run electrical and service into the building. No,
Chris,
everything's fine. You got it all wrong.
Chris, if I can stop you for a second, I think I've got the picture of this. You went in the basement. There's water coming out of an electrical box. You open the box, and there's conduits that come through the basement walls. So they're coming from underground, right? And they're open pipes. I mean, except they got cables in them, electrical cables.
That's correct.
And there's water coming out these pipes.
That's correct.
Right. Oh, okay. All right. That is
because we're dealing with the insurance company. But yes, if you can picture 3-inch stone conduit pipes that are typically used underground in the streets, a lot of us have seen those. Water coming
and most of the time, these are not water pipes, but today they are.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. So now you go outside.
So so we went out and told them, hey guys, you better check something, because that water that's backing up in your trench is actually getting into our building. And they were like, no, you must have a problem with your sprinkler system. I was like, no, sorry, I can't tell you. There's no sprinklers inside the electrical conduit box. He's like, what? I said, the primary service to the building is flooding right now. You need to turn off the water. Well, we did. Well, it didn't work. they were baffled. And after that, you could just imagine what was going on. So yeah, we got flooded out. Thankfully, we didn't have to panic too much. Everything was protected because what's in the basement is above what I was jokingly saying, the floodplain. We have everything on the wall. I always like to put stuff at least 3 feet above the floor in the event of trouble, whatever kind. And thankfully, we had recently done some work with our fiber service coming in for our internet and phones, and I happened to put the stuff up high. It originally was down low because the guys just put it in the box. And there you go. No. Put it up. So we skirted a disaster. But needless to say, we got past one disaster, and we managed to survive. And the elevator pit did fill up with water, but thankfully we were able to get that fixed and no problem. The elevator continued to function. That was fun. But
okay, Chris, I know you've got a situation with insurance, but can you describe any more fully the situation outside? Was there some kind of a vault that was underground that was filled with water?
That's the problem. We couldn't find where the vault is, the electrical vault. In New York City and many large cities, you pretty much walk over those electrical vaults all the time. Those metal grates. That not the subway ventilation grates. These are actual vaults that have transformers down below, and you'll feel the heat coming out. Those are typically what you see. In the street, it would typically be a manhole. There's nothing directly out front of us. I mean, when I walked up back and forth, there's no manhole, no electrical manhole cover, nothing that says. So apparently our service comes in probably from a vault, I guess, down the block, up the block, somewhere, and that's how it worked. So mind you, if you could think of this one city block length of pipe trench, that is a trench made, and they were replacing the pipe, filling up with water. It found the vault. It found it somewhere, somewhere along that line. And so we had a couple of inches that we had to clean out, and it spent 2 days of dehumidifiers and service companies coming in and cleaning things out. And we had to cut off the bottom of the drywall in the basement, the usual stuff for dampness and whatnot. Only to have yesterday a fiber cut from the same group of people at a different part of the street, and we lost phones and internet.
Oh gosh. All right. So it's hard to have alternate sources of electricity unless you got your own generator. And sounds like you do. Okay. So if you had to switch to that, could you have
transfer switch generator up on the roof? So we could have a completely flooded basement and still operate with no problem.
Where's the transfer switch for that to cut off the commercial power?
It's upstairs in the behind the studio in the TOC.
Okay, so the basement could be a disaster as long as there wasn't a fire or the reason that the building had to be evacuated.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
Which we were toying with the idea of going upstairs and go, maybe we should flip the switch just in case and put the generator online and then go downstairs and pull that big breaker with the wooden handle just to protect ourselves. But we chose not to. The water stopped after we went outside and told them what happened. Somebody realized, and it stopped. But it was a mess. So, but but again, be prepared. When you're putting in a generator at your studio location, don't do like we've done traditionally over the years back in the day and put it, say, in the parking lot behind your building, like some stations used to do. Put it in a place where it makes sense. In our facility, we're fortunate enough to have structurally the ability to put it up on the roof. We have two roofs. It's a several-story building, so we did a lower roof. But at least we had the ability to put it there. Electrical service switching was done in the studio section of the building. So we almost, if you will, we purposely created an island unto itself. So we can literally operate the studio complex, I'll call it, all the studios and the TOC, independent of the remaining side of the building. So the building can go dark, and we in the broadcast center could continue to function. And that was the way it was designed to work.
How could you back up that fiber connection that you had? You said you lost some services for a while.
Well,
that take you very long to get.
That's out of our control. Unfortunately, I did ask. This is great. We call the providers, customer support number, and we tell them, hey, we believe there's a fiber issue and we've lost services. And the person says, oh, don't worry, it'll restore itself momentarily. It's a self-healing, ring is what we use. So I said to somebody, I said, well, we called them an hour ago. We still haven't gotten service. That's not a sonic ring or a self-healing, whatever you want to call it. I said, it should have happened much quicker. So the supervisor for the company happened to be outside of our studio at the vault. There's a fiber vault literally in front of our building. It's perfect. It's like the best place to be. I was like, I can see where our fiber is. And I went and asked him, I said, so I'm just curious, is this a dual entry or a fiber, a ring, sonnet, whatever you want to call it these days? He just starts laughing. I'm like, He goes, let's just put it this way. When this stuff went in several years ago, we tried to do redundant paths for everybody on the block or in the business district. However, local government impediments sort of prevented us from making it financially viable. So basically, we have single point of failure throughout the entire business district, and and in the fault is another fiber run from a different carrier that's not connected to anything because they can't obtain a franchise license.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you in New Jersey?
Yes, it'll cost you to say that again.
Yeah. I better be careful. I might have some cement shoes.
You can't make this stuff up. And then people challenge say things to people and say, no, that's not true. You've got that all wrong. It's like, well, when it comes to making money for a business, you will spend the money to put 2 runs of fiber in if it's going to be for your benefit to provide services to a customer. So why wouldn't you do it? Unless it's going to cost too much just to lay the fiber. And we all know what it costs to lay fiber and open up a street and do stuff. So there's that cost. And then there's the other cost involved that apparently this was, I guess they did this 5, 6, 7 years ago. This whole fiber project went in. So yeah. Well, it's no different than what happened in Philadelphia, New York City, and a few other major cities when the local carriers found out that their competition was coming and they were going to be putting fiber in the streets and doing things. And all of a sudden, they no longer had a monopoly in the manhole. And people started screaming and came up with all these laws and rules. And, they went to court. And then, Philadelphia did the Wi-Fi project that got nixed because Verizon, AT&T, and everybody else said you can't do that because it's unfair. They can do a cheaper service. I'm like, no. They're not doing it cheaper. They're just providing a service for the citizens, for the residents to have. And it wasn't even more than 2 megabits up and down. So what the hell? Yeah, that was a whole big court case. You could look that one up too.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, it's
wow.
It's like on the polls, right? There was a whole big to do in the news, 2 years ago about sharing poles. Remember, competitive carriers wanted to put services in neighborhoods, but they had to get permission for easement, rights of way. And apparently, those folks already on the pole, it takes a while to get through their, minutia to get the cable moved up so you can come in.
We had exactly the same thing here in Nashville, and I think Joe's going to chime in. Nashville was one of the cities that Google Fiber was going to come into, right? And so they put an office in. They did a little bit of fiber, and then they ran into this problem where the Google's contractors couldn't just put fiber on the poles. They had to ask the other people already on the poles to move, and so Google tried to say, "Look, our contractor will be happy to move those things and make everybody live together just fine." And I don't know what. Anyway, bottom line is, Google Fiber's not here. And although the scare of Google Fiber coming in did make AT&T and Comcast both improve their service markedly. And so both AT&T and Comcast here in Nashville got a lot better and didn't get any more expensive, at least not for me. So I'm happy with that situation. Suncast, our producer, says that Google Fiber also pulled out of Louisville. Now, there may be other reasons. I think they had some other business plans. Fiber looked good at one time, but didn't look so good later on. Meanwhile, Joe, so Joe, are you saying that in San Francisco, having redundant backup plans can also be difficult?
I think the word corruption comes to mind, but we won't go too much into that. But I had a situation where I had fiber from 3 different providers going in front of my building, and to run, it was going to cost $50,000 each to run 12 feet of conduit, and so we didn't do it. But which was frustrating because it's crazy because it's right there, and I almost would have done it. It just made me crazy, though, the whole thing. And then they ended up not lighting some of it up. But where I live in Pahrump, we've got there's places where we have 3 or 4 different fibers from 3 different vendors on the poles, and the cable TV. It's all and the telephone. So you see cable, fiber. In this little tiny
I've seen
town.
Your poles, yeah.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
Oh, so, I've also seen your wireless service that you've got around there. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was a cool way to get it up fast. They basically ran a fiber backbone around town, and it's as spread out as Las Vegas, but just a fraction of the population. Hey, you've been out, you visited us, but in any case, they ran that, and then they built up these. I call them cell sites, but they put up tall telephone poles, and there'd be a cabinet on the side of the telephone pole with all the transmission gear on it and a bunch of sector antennas. So it was like a cell site. It was fed with the fiber infrastructure, and it's worked out really well. Of course, we're hoping they go ahead and finish the project and get fiber to the home so we can really go to town. But it's going to be nice.
All right, we're going to be back with a tip. Since Joe's still with us, Chris is still with us. We're talking about continuation of business throughout a disaster, and do what you can do. Obviously, for electricity, you try to have your own generator in a place where it's not going to get hurt. An example of a generator getting hurt, I'm part owner of a couple radio stations in American Samoa, and you may remember. It's almost 10 years ago now, I suppose, but there was a tsunami in American Samoa, and the tsunami came in and it wiped out the electric plant that was serving our radio station. And then the tsunami turned the corner in the harbor, and it wiped out the ground-mounted generator that was serving our building. The owner of the building that our studio was in provided backup power for all the tenants of the building. But within just a few minutes, that generator was totally underwater, and so there was no power whatsoever. The only option would have been to put the thing on the roof, and that wasn't going to work out. So it's not always possible to have backup power, but if you can do it, do it. And then since we're so dependent on information, on connectivity, either WAN, private WAN, or public internet, it's important to figure out in advance, can I get some backup internet? In fact, we'll take 1 second. Chris Tobin, you had an interesting device there right in front of you. What was that exactly? How did that help you out?
Oh, this is my tip of the day. But yeah, what this is.
I'll tell you what. Well, hang on. We can make it the tip of the day. I'm sorry. We'll be right back then and do the tip of the day. Okay. Our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Lavo at lavo.com/TWiRT. Hang on for the tip of the day.
There has probably never been a better time in history to buy a new radio mixing console. Today's consoles are more sophisticated than ever, with more features and functions than you can shake a stick at. But have you noticed how complicated they are? There's a sea of knobs and switches and displays and buttons. Some of them look like you might need a pilot's license to do your show. Well, a board doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful. Just look at the new Ruby mixing surface from Lavo. The first thing you notice is how smooth and streamlined it is. Ruby has lots of cool tech, but what it doesn't have is that confusing ocean of buttons that clutter things up. Now, we all know that there are some console features the jock only uses once in a while. So why dedicate controls to them? Ruby fixes this problem by moving those once-in-a-blue-moon controls to a touch-sensitive, customizable GUI that happily shares screen space with your other studio software, helping you fight control room clutter. Thanks to this design innovation, talent that use Ruby produce smoother shows with less errors. Controls that are used the most fall naturally to hand, while functions that rarely need adjustment are easily controlled with just a couple of clicks in the context-sensitive GUI. And Ruby has cool features you won't find on other boards, like Auto Mix, an intelligent gain writing function that guarantees the perfect mix for multi-mic morning shows and call-in segments. Dual mode snapshots that instantly switch the motorized faders between on-air and production modes, and enough DSP and I/O options to make even your pro sound pals green with envy. And because quality is as important to Lavo as it is to you, every console is proudly built to fanatically precise standards at Lavo's own factory in Germany. If you're ready to declutter your control room, do yourself a favor. Check out the new Ruby and the other cool Lavo radio tech at www.lawo.com/TWiRT.
Thanks a lot to Lavo at lavo.com/TWiRT for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And please use that little extra /TWiRT when you go to their website. When you use /TWiRT, you will be taken right to their radio products. You don't have to wade through all those $500,000 consoles that they have to be taken right there. So, hey, it's near the end of our show here, but we have tips of the week from Chris and from Joe, and if they don't mention mine, I'll mention mine too. So, Chris Tobin, you've got it looks like you got a spider there. What is that?
Oh, spider? There you go.
Yeah.
So what I have here is a 4G wireless router. Now everybody goes, oh yeah, I got those too. But this one is actually designed as a business class, meaning that it's designed for, rough work, heavy duty business type stuff. So this is from MoFi Networks, MoFi Network.com. And this is has a Wi-Fi access point. This one happens to be 2.4 gig. And the paddles that you see here are 4G antennas. Is it? And this will serve with a SIM card from either Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, and I believe this model will do Canadian carriers, so Bell Media and Telus and a few others. So Rogers, I guess, is the other one. So you can do that. So now the nice thing about this is it's a 4-port switch, and it has a WAN port. So I can plug in my WAN, a wired internet here in the blue connector, and then have my services as it only would. When there's a failure of that WAN port, the SIM card gets activated, and now I'm on my data plan, my wireless data plan. And as I said, this is a business class, so it has a lot of features. The access point actually has a portal, captive portal capability, so you could actually keep people out, or they have to log in, and you can keep track of what they do. I can tell you that one of these is in use at a very large building that we're providing internet service to the broadcasters for at the moment, so they can do their work. And because it's a DAS, a distributed antenna system in the building, the cell site that's serving this little router is no more than 30 feet away. The antenna is, that is. So we got a great solid signal, great connection, and off it goes. And we're avoiding the issues with trying to figure out which carrier is going to be willing to give us internet service and pay for it, not have to have issues with jurisdiction. So this is what it is. It's a pretty cool little box. I used it 2 weeks ago on a Saturday for a netcast for a sports group, and we did a complete 2-hour show over a Verizon SIM card, and it was great. And we hooked up 3 computers. We streamed video, vMix. We were using vMix, and we had a great time. So that's it.
Wow.
And it's got all kinds of features. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you what they are, but it's handy. It's really good. And I have my little, here's my bag. I have a, notice, Ethernet cable, power supply. You might ask, why do you have an Ethernet cable if you got access point? Because in case you need to make changes or you had to reset it, the best way to get into it is with a wired Ethernet from your laptop.
Yeah,
Do not
yeah,
rely
sure.
on the Wi-Fi access stuff. It will get you in trouble. I've watched people do it at events. It's like, nope, that's it. So again, plan ahead. Make sure you have an Ethernet cable with you with your laptop. But there you go. There is a funky looking.
I was just looking this up at the website. We'll have that in the link in the show notes at MoFiNetwork.com. They've got a number of different models. All of them are under $300. Some of them are under $200 for ones that are not quite as fancy as that one. And somebody's also selling them on Amazon. In fact, one of their models is an Amazon's Choice. So easy to get hold of. I will mention that last week I was looking at something similar to that, Chris, but I don't think it's nearly as good. There's a NETGEAR makes a 4G LTE modem that has passed through, and it's about $100. Then there are there's other stuff on the market.
Remember, you have to, when you're looking for these things, it's very important. Make sure, they're willing, and they tell you it's an enterprise class, a business class router. So in order to put that on a product, you've got to legitimately be able to support that. And then when you look at the protocols that this box supports, from the security, from access through captive portal procedures, and many other things, it's pretty good. It's really powerful. I've been playing with this for about a year now for several clients and projects, and it's worked out very nicely. And
I like it. I'm glad I hadn't seen a really professional solution, so thank you for sharing that. That's cool. I feel better about that than some of the plastic ones that I see out there.
Well, I can tell you, the best part is when you make mistakes with programming and blow it up, you hit the preset button and it goes right back to factory default. The factory default is perfect. It doesn't use the 192.168.1 subnet. It actually uses a different subnet, so you never have to worry about having it plugged in somewhere. Oh no, we're gonna have a conflict. It's great.
Yeah,
it gets you up and running real fast.
That's one thing I like about the MikroTik routers is they reset to 192.168.88. something, and nothing else is defaulted to 88, so it doesn't conflict. So speaking of doesn't conflict, it's Joe Talbot. Joe, you have a tip for our viewers and listeners?
Sure. If you haven't played around with SIP yet, I mean, you probably, if you haven't, get an account from somebody. I mean, I'm on Facebook, Joe.Talbot. So it's easy to find me. I'm happy to give recommendations, but we've used Vitality historically, but VoIP.ms, flowroute, there's a jillion of these providers, and get an account with them, $10 a month or something, get some phone numbers, get familiar with it, because it'll be a tool in your back pocket that you can use to, get phone lines wherever you happen to be. If your office gets destroyed and you've got to go someplace and get service up right away, they can port your number over to one of those providers pretty quickly these days, and as a general rule, and it's very easy just to register from any place and have phone service, right now for a low cost. But you want to be familiar with it so you know what to do. And I'm happy to help you online if you want to look for me.
That's very cool. And thanks for that offer. And then, just getting started with SIP is indeed you got me started with Vitality, and that's kind of meant for professionals at the wholesale level to go in and order things. So it's a little intimidating. I'll put these other ones in the show notes there, SIP.us and flowroute. And of course, the MoFi Network and VoIP.ms. We'll put all those in there. And so my tip, I guess, is the same thing that I chatted about earlier, and that is that, hey, engineers, if you don't have a SIP phone, get you one of these. This is the Grandstream GXP1620. I think they make a 1625 now. I don't know. Sometimes these are on sale for under $40. I think I may have paid 48 or 50 for this one. And there's phones by Yealink. I've got a Yealink over here that connects to my employer, the Telos Alliance. I've got a Grandstream over here. I kind of like the Grandstream layout. To me, it's just that when you browse into it, the pages are easy to understand, but I guess, whichever one you get started with is going to be good. But obviously you hook it up to your network and you get you a provider of a SIP extension, and voila. And then let's say that you're doing your own SIP PBX in your building. Let's say you got, free PBX on a computer, or you bought an appliance to be a SIP a PBX. Well, you can just use, you can test out using this. Maybe you got some other brand phones that you're supposed to make work with it, and you're having trouble with that. Well, get another one. Most of these asterisk-based SIP PBXs, they'll work with these very generic third-party SIP telephones. And like Joe said, the quality is great. You can get G722, HD voice on a lot of calls. So, Joe, thanks for your tip. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Enjoyed it. Good to see you again.
And good luck with the whatever's wrong at the AM transmitter site in Palm Springs.
Yeah, it'll be fine. I don't want to go outside right now because there's stuff blowing by that's like Volkswagens. So anyway,
the land of the tumbleweed. Well, it's not tumbleweeds there, is it?
No, not here. We're having an explosion of flowers blooming and butterflies. So the front of the truck looks like it's orange right now. Yeah, it's really messy. Yeah.
Oh no. Well, Chris, I hope you have good weather on your ride home. You got rain, maybe a little. Is it cold enough for snow there? I guess not. Otherwise, it'd be snow.
No. It's 46 degrees, I think.
Oh, okay. Raining. All right.
No snow today.
All right.
No, that's all right.
Good deal. Well, here in Nashville, we had a beautiful first day of spring yesterday. It was just the kind of day you just want to stay outside. It was just beautiful. You want to suck up the fresh spring air, and it was really nice. First day we've had like that in quite a while. Hey, thanks a lot to Chris Tobin and to Joe Talbot for joining us on this episode of This Week in Radio Tech. You can always find us if you go to YouTube and look for TWiRT, or This Week in Radio Tech, and subscribe to the channel. That way you can get notified. If you click the little bell there too, you get notified when there's a new episode, and you can watch them at your leisure. You can also look at the show notes. Of course, our website, thisweekinradiotech.com, you've got the show notes there, and also at gfqnetwork.com. You'll find them there as well. Hey, I tell you, next week, we're actually going to record our show on a different day next week, Tuesday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to record the show because our guest is not available on Thursday at this time because he's doing his own podcast on Thursdays about this time. And our guest is, you know how much Chris and I both love drones, and Joe does too. And we've had some guests on the show, Sam Wallingford, for example, with Salem Radio and using drones to do tower inspections. Well, our guest is going to be the amazing Ken Heron. Now, Ken is he is a drone connoisseur. He does all kinds of crazy things. And here's the other thing about Ken. He's a radio guy. He does a morning show in a small town in West Tennessee, and yet he does these incredible drone videos. So it's going to be a fun, free-for-all show with great drone videos and fun from Ken Heron. Again, he's a kindred spirit. He's a radio guy, so you're gonna love hearing from Ken. He's a lot of fun. So we'll record the show on Tuesday at 5 Eastern, but we'll play the show back at this regular time. So if you're used to tuning in on Thursdays at 5 Eastern, great. We'll be here. We just won't be live. All right. Thanks a lot to Suncast for producing the show. And also thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network. Chris and Joe, thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.